Okay, we made it the wrong way. Thank you for your great introduction, and thanks for being here. Before we proceed, we have a few questions just to get you going. So is everybody in the room aware of what EUDR is? Have you all heard of this term? If you could raise hand or whatever. Who has heard about EUDR? Okay, and who has heard about the EUDR 1 year ago? Right. Still a few hands, but great. So is there somebody that doesn't know whatsoever what EUDR is? Well, great. You're great. Thank you. Thank you for your, confidence in showing this. We'll try to explain a lot.
I would like to ask you, are there any producers here that are selling coffee in Europe? If you could raise your hand. Okay. And roasters that are based in Europe? Okay.
Great. So we have a diverse audience. So just a quick introduction. It's been made before, but what I say that Rodolfo he's a coffee producer who made his own importing company into Europe. So he brings in his coffee to Europe under the Productor Europa label, and we founded Sapere Coffee as well, and the International Center for the Advancement of Coffee. And the reason why we have this picture here is because actually this is in Prague, where the European Space Agency is based. So that's why we put it here, and it's an honor to be with him on stage for me.
Yeah, so to introduce Jaromir. Jaromir is a consultant. He's on the board of Digital Europe. Digital Europe is the association of digital companies. They represent digital companies at the EU. And he's a co-owner of a coffee roastery. They have a few and also they have an instant coffee factory. So when we look at EUDR, I come from the producer side, he comes from the roaster side, so I think we can have kind of like a global perspective on this new legislation.
Okay, so just very quickly what EUDR is. It is regulation introduced by the European Union, by the member states and the European Union as a whole, that aims to fight deforestation, and there is a clear date set for when land should have not been deforested. It's by the end of 2020, and it should be starting in 2025. We'll speak a bit more later if that's going to happen or not, but the idea behind this is to protect native forests in the producing countries. Yeah, you go ahead with this.
Yeah, so when we start diving into EUDR, so the EUDR definition of a forest is based on FAO. So this will have some implications that we're going to see later, because basically what is a forest? It can be treated as a forest. We're going to look into this during the presentation.
Yeah. Then a question, why should you care? I mean, that's always the question. And the reason why you should care is because without, following the regulation, producers wouldn't be able to import their coffee to European Union when this regulation is in effect. And as well as importers, traders wouldn't be able to do the same. They have to, work about it. And if you roasters have anything to do with direct trade and importing, you have to care yourself as well, besides doing other stuff that you've done before. This would be a new regulation. It's a bad thing to do stuff more, but this is how things are going to be. If you don't comply, especially if you're an importer, you can get fined heavily. It's up to 4% of your global revenues. So if you're a small and medium company, I mean, it's still significant, but for the big multinationals, I'm sure some of them are here. This is a very crazy punishment. And you can lose the goods as well. So if you don't have that compliant, somebody can take your coffee. Never a good thing.
Yeah, so we're going to start by looking at this from the producer's perspective. As producers, we sometimes feel at a disadvantage that the whole system is making it very hard for us to succeed. So we're going to be kind of placing ourselves in the producer's shoes and trying to see the negative and positive side of EUDR.
Right. So we start with the negative outlook. Just a disclaimer, it's not that we posit everything that is there. We try to gather, different perspectives for, different positions. So, we're going to be like strawmanning with this and show you what they could be. So we start with the negative, Rodolfo has quite a few. These are them. We're going to show the first one.
So we would start with Europe, the European Union likes to portray itself as successfully reforesting, and they'll give you some data that they're really reforesting, but then this is where the FAO's definition of a forest comes in. If you could keep going. So here we can see a lot of deforestation in Scandinavia. So when you look at the timber industry, there's actually a lot of the old growth, really tall trees are actually being removed in Europe. So Europe in a way can claim that they're reforesting, but a lot of this is the timber industry. So it's a monocrop, one type of tree, hundreds of hectares of just one type of tree. And then if we see really what are the areas that are more forested, it's not really Europe. Yeah, so there, we would see how, a tree plantation, according to the FAO, so according to EUDR, a monocrop tree plantation would be considered a forest. So according to that definition, we could completely eliminate the Amazon forest and just plant eucalyptus, and this would be considered a forest, which isn't really what we want, right? So I found myself on a hike in the Czech Republic, and at first there was this beautiful forest, but then I started noticing all you see is one type of tree, all the same size, the same age, so that really doesn't provide a habitat. It's just a plantation. And then we were inside a national park, and there was this thing removing all these trees. And why were they removing all these trees? And so we start seeing that a lot of the trees are dying, and it turns out that because of monocrop timber plantations, they have a plague that's a beetle that's eating up and drying the trees, right?
This is the beetle. And so actually the thing is that, everybody says that we're reforesting as a country, but a lot of this, problem, that they changed that completely, and we're actually deforesting in our country. And there's not so many ways how to tackle it. It's complicated, as with monocrops. So either they were trying to just let it be, not log it, but then there were huge forest fires. There's something called the Czech Switzerland. It's like part of a country, like a natural park again. And there was a huge forest fire just because this type of wood is way more susceptible to not just disease but forest fires as well. So this is a little beetle. I'm sure you know your producer beetles as well. So we're trying to show something from the other parts of the world. So this is weird.
So, so if you see these numbers, there's very, very few of the original forest remaining, and it's all in just a few countries.
This is a bold one. You go ahead.
Yeah, so this is based on the idea of, taxation without representation. So in this case, as Latin American producers, we would be suffering from the European Union making laws that are going to affect our production that we have no say in, right? So we have no way of choosing. And then when we look at what's actually happening in Europe, for example, the Tesla factory in Berlin, they want to produce electric cars. They eliminated 500,000 trees to make this factory. So it's like, we're getting burdened with legislation that they're not applying to themselves, right? And then, this is like a trip from Madrid to Barcelona by train. Like, you don't see any trees until you get close to Barcelona. And there's an old myth that a squirrel could jump from the north of Spain to the south of Spain, jumping from tree to tree, and it would never touch the ground. And now they basically have no trees. And these are the people that are going to be telling, this is agriculture in the south of Spain. Just greenhouses. You can see it from space. Like, just that's what's supposed to be agriculture. That's so here we see Pitalito. So one of the most productive areas, like I think it's the 9 most productive municipalities in Colombia are surrounding Pitalito. So here you can see what, coffee production, such a contrast to what would be considered agriculture in Europe. This is Santana volcano in El Salvador as well. Shade-grown coffee, it's like a compromise between the forest and providing income for farmers.
And then, speaking still of the negative, this is a cost, attached to doing this. If you're a producer, so either how do you geolocate? If you have a smaller farm, then you have to have a GPS device that might be your phone, but maybe there's no signal there. It's complicated, so you have to buy one of these. They're expensive. How many you need to buy? Maybe you can take a selfie with the daily newspaper and the geolocalization, but still, it's a pain. It's a pain. I'm not going to say where.
What I would mention here is that we basically have to map all the farms with GPS data, and we have to do this extra work. It's an extra cost. How do we do this in areas without internet? We have to get some equipment, but then we do all this work. And what do we get in return? Because it's just extra work, extra cost. So then, a big topic is carbon credits. So why wouldn't, if we have to document, we basically start by being accused, have you deforested? And we have to prove that we haven't. So if we do all this work to prove that we haven't deforested, what are the benefits? Wouldn't it make sense for us to just automatically be able to apply for carbon credits if we're proving that we are not deforesting?
And then everybody gets confused. What's going on? What should you do? Is it enough? Is my GPS valid? Do I have that so many points in that big number? Are there in decimals enough to comply? What's the official step-by-step process? How do I know I've done it right? How do I know who owns the data? We've heard the question before. If somebody helps you, are those their data or your data? It's your farm, your polygons. And what if then there's another one. What if you, completely eradicate part of your older trees and rebuild, reinvest for new ones? Is that deforestation? Because it would show up on the satellite, of course. So these sensors should be provided to producers. As always, it's not clear, and it's a global system. It's not like, somebody's piloting it in a small region if it works. You're going to launch it once at a time for the whole producing world. Every producer is impacted.
Sorry. Well, the main point is that the EU is talking about these new laws, and they haven't been very clear about is there a step-by-step. Is there a website where we can submit the data? It's generating a lot of confusion. And then, are our governments going to help? We're getting messages from companies that are offering consulting on this, and then you can get nervous. You have to pay someone to help you. It's a lot of confusion. And then, something I would mention is that when governments negotiate trade agreements, then you have a trade agreement, and then the EUDR is changing the terms of these agreements, but then we don't see our governments in Latin America reacting to this. Okay, the EU wants to impose more restrictions, more complications to trade. Where are governments saying, okay, well, if you want to import European wine into Latin America, then we're going to put these regulations to you as well. It's tit for tat.
It's a funny one. I think we've done enough on the negative part. I mean, we found some positives as well. I'm sure you could find more. We can discuss maybe, in the questions if you have any, or just any statements. They're welcome. So I'll start. You're still the producer. I'll do a bit more. I don't want you to be the negative guy, and I'm the positive guy. But there's some positives to it. Actually, it brings up the topic of deforestation on stage, and it's a huge issue. And we could do together. We could do things about that. So if every coffee is transparent, even the bigger blends or regional blends, they should have all the parts EUDR compliant, so geolocalized, brought down to a single farmer. So there's a lot more opportunity for transparency in your coffee if you're looking for it, because often transparency comes with value, and we think it's a good thing as roasters. So there should be an opportunity, to change the paradigm of how you sell your coffee to your partners.
So something I would mention here, we still don't know if there's going to be access to this data, but for example, coming from the producing side, when I started producing coffee, I would give all the coffee and information to importers, and then they would take the coffee to roasters, and then I would be very curious, what did they think of my coffee? I did a honey, I did a natural, and I would feel that there would be barriers to be able to get in touch with roasters. So you would hope that if we have to provide all the data, that then the roasters will start demanding that data and to actually facilitate connecting with the farms. You would hope for transparency, right?
We should be able to, have more incentives to direct trade, because you eventually would be able to, it's following up what Rodolfo just said, but you eventually would have access to even your roaster client ends up with the coffee, they should be able to find out who's the producer is or who the producers are. Of course, they can always be more. So as producers, I think you would have really the opportunity to showcase your farms and work closer with people on the other side of the world better than before, since you all have to show where the coffee comes from.
So sometimes our countries aren't legislating so well to preserve the forest. So here you could see it as a good thing that at least the EU is worried about deforestation. They're going to, if we want to sell into Europe, then we have to follow certain rules. So that might actually help prevent deforestation in our countries. And
of course, this would be one of the main points. We'd be getting back to this, so sorry for a spoiler alert, but I think I can emphasize that right now. Shade grow coffee is the way to go. It's not that just we comply, but we could use this as an opportunity, like all of us that are involved in the name of this talk, and everyone here, we could use this as an opportunity to not only comply, but to upscale and introduce shade-grown coffee as something that's climate friendly, that's helping the local environments, that's helping the farms to stay healthy, but it's beneficial for business, which always is important, of course.
So here are some examples of diversified farms where you can have shade that also produces other goods. So this
No, but you'll go ahead with that. Agroforestry is our, USP. So it was actually your idea. I'm stealing it now. And the point is that, agroforestry is something that we can, distinguish ourselves. I think you say Brazil with the harvesters, they're never going to be able to compete with that. So since we have to follow, the regulation, we could also use it as an advantage, and promote agroforestry. Am I putting your words into my mouth, right?
That's good.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there's a farm in Tolima, that's in Ethiopia, that's El Salvador,
We're getting to roasters. Great. So roasters, negative. So I'll start with this, so I'm not just doing the positive things. Roasters, can get annoyed as well with this. First, I think they didn't really know it's coming. Nobody told them what they need to do. So it's all very new. Just so you give, it's not like whining what I'm going to do now. But maybe you should be aware of this, that most of the roasters that are actual clients of your coffee, they're like small and medium companies, companies like your fazendas or fincas, sorry about that. There's been quite a crisis in Europe going on for a few years, not just because of COVID or the war, the Russian aggression in Ukraine, but as well as high inflation, high energy prices that's come with it. So basically the EUDR is another pain in the, I'm not going to finish the sentence, but it's something, you as a small company, you didn't want to, you want to focus on your business. You don't want to focus on just another regulation nobody knows about. Maybe you've been building like the relationships between producers, roasters by yourself in the last, decade. So this is like a group of producers, roasters in El Salvador. Things change. You can, it's like I know advertising is forbidden here, but you can see like one of the producers in the picture lost weight, is kind of in shape. But this group maybe would be able, to do something about the regulation, but, we much rather, hang out with each other than, develop some papers. But like speaking from my own experience, this is from Africa, in West Africa, Cameroon. So we've been trying to establish a relationship with the producers there, smallholder producers, packing group. Since 2017, I've been to Cameroon for the first time in 2017 with this beautiful, group of small producers. 6 months after my visit, it's an Anglophone Cameroon, and they started, a civil war. There was battle, just, at this location, like 3 or 4 months after I left. So we were not able to follow up on that for 2 years. And just when things got a little better, COVID hit. So again, one more complication for that. And it took for another 2 years. And now finally this year, after a disruption, we're bringing a container of coffee from Cameroon as we speak now. And how do we do this with these producers, that they lack assistance from the government, that they don't even know this regulation is, and the group of producers, of course, they're knowledgeable, but it's so hard. Even if one person is missing, based on the EUDR, you shouldn't sell the coffee. So it's just, we're trying to establish these relationships, and it's just so more and more complicated. There's no reason for it from our point of view.
Yeah, I think we need to be hurrying up with the...
Yeah, okay. And then, if you look at how it's governed, it's even more complicated. I left this in Czech on purpose, because even if it was in English or in Spanish, you wouldn't understand it. This basically says that in the Czech Republic, for EUDR compliance, the body that is responsible is the National Forest Agency. So these are people who know how to take care of the forest, the monocrop that we were showing before. But they are not the people that know how to deal with coffee. So how do I talk to them? Very complicated. And then there's the European level. How do I even fill it in the system? Super complicated. Nobody even knows if it's happening. There's some videos, but we will see. And then this point is really funny. Maybe you brought up that again.
Yeah. So some of the worries as producers is that we've been developing these relationships with roasters, and then there's this new legislation that will complicate the relationship, because then you would think, okay, we have to, go and map this and like get a point GPS. What if there's like a big cliff? Like what? I don't know. So it might be just easier. Okay, I'll just buy from a farm that's like a little square. Or,
Yeah, and
but like one last thing, the whole thing about it might make it easier for roasters to just buy from a multinational because they have all the infrastructure to provide, they can designate employees just to deal with this. So it might hurt all these relationships that we've been working very hard to develop.
Right. Yeah. So the positive views, we're going to just browse through them. I mean, they might be similar to those one with the producers. Consumers, there's a lot of research, consumer research, that consumers actually expect, companies, businesses to do something, for sustainability, not just economically, but of course, environmentally. So this could be like an opportunity that brings the topic forward. Well, the small and medium roasters wouldn't, otherwise not follow that. Then one positive thing, if you're a roaster, you don't have to actually do that much, If you have an importer, they'll just send you the paperwork. You store it for 10 years, I believe, and you have to be sure it's compliant. I mean, you have to trust them, of course. But as a roaster, I mean, you're kind of covered in this, so that is okay. And as we said, you can actually use that as an opportunity to develop new products, such as, you have these big plants, and then you have this single farmer coffees. Maybe you can have now like 10 farmers coffee, bigger volumes, and still transparent. So this is something, my roastery would be doing in
So more
Nicaragua.
Traceability for regional lots.
Yeah.
If you have to know each producer that composes the lot, yeah.
Yeah, so we're getting to conclusions. Don't worry about us. So we need a, EUDR Superman. They could be the NGOs. We represent an NGO here.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Well, yeah. So to look at this, we made an NGO called Advance.Coffee in the Czech Republic. We want to tackle some of these problems together. So I think it's a way, like having an NGO, we can bring quite a few roasters together and harness and work together. So this is just an example of there's like this tree frog that there's like a fungus going around the world killing amphibians. This tree frog has basically disappeared from Mexico, and in shade-grown forest, shade-grown coffee in El Salvador, you find a lot of this tree frog. So we're kind of, we made these little frogs. It's sort of just a way to raise awareness, to show some positive side that shade-grown coffee can take care of the environment.
Yeah, we've gone through this. If you have a lush forest, you should be promoted by it. Basically, that's it. And
yeah. So, I mean, when you look at different systems of agriculture, shade-grown coffee is probably one of the most, sustainable, and provides habitat for fauna. So, yeah, the main point here would be that they want to cause some problems for us with this legislation. We turn it around and make it a topic, make it something positive.
Yeah, and maybe.
So one of the ideas is to make our own certificates. Instead of paying for certifications, like we come together, we make our own certificate that talks about agroforestry, regenerative farming.
Yeah, and like if you have a well-informed NGO, it's maybe better equipped to speak to your local government to what the situation is, because if you come as one company or as a company, the governments usually treat you a little different than as NGOs. So even for these simple terms, you're better equipped to talk to the respective governments. And like we should say if it's happening or not, because at the moment, it should start right next year. I mean, there's a talk now, and Perfect Daily Grind has been, one of the early people or, magazines, saying that it might get postponed. Everybody expects that, at least for a year. So as we speak to our friends in Brussels now, so, I mean, there's this process that the European Parliament has to approve it. They have like 2 or 3 sessions left this year, and all the 27 governments, need to approve that, say yes. So that still needs to be done. If that doesn't happen, everybody expects it should, but I mean, something could happen, then it would kick off, next year. If everything goes as expected, and you can follow that on the, webpage of the European Parliament, then we should have one more year to get ready for this. And I guess one last thing we have.
So another concept that we're developing is to motivate producers to hand over like the data. We could give something in exchange, right? So working with different roasters, gathering funding from roasters, we can set up a nursery that will give trees. So again, the concept of we're not just not deforesting, we are reforesting and we're preserving these agroforestry systems. So handing producers trees for data could be,
something we're trying to do in El Salvador, and the early stage shows it's a success and the producers are interested.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I am very sure that we did our part here, and thank you for having us.